Okay, hi! So, I'm gonna be recording chapter 7 of I Borrowed a Cat's Paws by Crouching Tiger. I do have a little spectator with me today. You wanna say hi? My spectator instantly died, guys! That or their thing is slightly dying. Hello? You there? Okay, think they're dead. But it's Pit and Ma. So they're just gonna be hanging out here with this. I do
I'm
wanna.
not dead.
They're not dead, okay. You didn't
I'm
respond.
here. Just my mic sucks, and I'm also in public on this podcast street.
Okay. Well, anyway, well, that one does that. Uh, real quickly, do you mind muting yourself for when I'm doing the actual
Yeah,
full recording?
yeah, yeah, sure.
Okay. Anyway, um, I'm gonna actually probably add a little sector at the end of Pika's story time. That's something I've been debating doing. Just random stories about me, because I've been telling people random stories lately, and it's been really funny. So I thought, why not make it a sector? Have whoever's in the call with me ask me a question and then see if I got a story to it. Or something. You know? Okay. Also, if you want to recommend fics or anything, do check the the post. There is a post that says fic recommendations. I don't care if you're recommending your own fic. I'm chill with it, whatever. I don't care if you're an author recommending it. I don't care if you're just a random viewer recommending a fic that you like. Because the thing is, I may just do art for the fic if I don't podfic it, you know? If I like it, I'll do something for it. Whether that be art or podficing it. I gotta get permission though to podfic, so a little harder. I did get permission for a series. I think I mentioned this already. But I'm either gonna finish this series first or alternate between them. I also am going to have to record the one shot related to this series that technically is a story diverge for this first sector of the series. So I think I'm going to record that after this and have it before in the playlist. Yeah, that playlist is going to be really weird after a point. But anyway, check the timestamp on the video if you want to skip this stuff. I already said the chapter, all that stuff. I think we're good. So this is chapter 7. Oh, okay, my spectator left. This is chapter 7, though. Every single part of Shota ached. He retreated to sleep under the couch again after Kurgiri had turned off the radio, trying to catch up on the sleep he'd missed by being turned into a cat. That had been a mistake. 3 hours later, around when he was normally expected to appear in class, he woke up aching and sore everywhere that it was possible to be aching and sore, and a few places besides. There was no doubt that Chota was covered in bruises under his fur. The muscles in his left ear twinged with every twitch. His back claws screamed at him when he tried to flex them, and even his tail felt stiff and sore. It was about on par with how he felt after a rough patrol. At least a rough patrol that didn't leave him with anything more serious than bruises. Shota wriggled out from under the couch and paused to stretch. Every single muscle he had cried out in dismay at the motion, but Shota was used to it. In the time he'd been asleep, Mr. Caprice had shown up and apparently someone had gone shopping. Kurgiri was working on unpacking the grocery bags that were now laid out on the kitchen table. Mr. Caprice sitting at the sole empty section of the table with a laptop. Ah, good morning again, Kitty. Kurgiri greeted properly. Shota didn't even offer him an acknowledgement. Put your hands up was over, and Shota was going back to being as frustrating and uncooperative as possible. I have something for you, Kurigiri's Kurigiri said, voice tentative. Shota suspected it was something he didn't actually want. Sure enough, when he shot a dark glance at Kurigiri, he saw the Miss Villain preferring a thick rubber flea collar. Shota peeled his ears back and bared his teeth with a hiss. You did agree to wear it, Kurigiri said, almost desperate. Shota snarled low in his throat, his hackles creeping up. How silly of you to trust the cat's word, Mr. Capress said airily. I had hoped that a cat as intelligent as this one would know the benefits of a flea collar, Kurigiri said, sounding defeated. Good. That was the tone Shota wanted associated with everything he did. Defeat and despair. Cats know a great deal, Mr. Capretz said wisely, often much more than we give them credit for. Very rarely does this impact their actions. Mood, Spitter said from where he was laying lengthwise on the love seat, his feet dangling over the arm. He does need to wear a flea collar, Kurigiri said firmly, probably the most confident he sounded since Shota had bit him in the first time. I am certainly not going to be the one to put it on him, Mr. Capress established, looking down at the screen of his laptop. Shota narrowed his eyes. Considering the remaining villains in the room, Kurigiri wasn't a hands-on attacker, and Shota didn't expect him to be incredibly interested in chasing a cat around the room. Spinner, on the other hand, that was a potential threat. Shota didn't know how much extra speed or agility Gecko gave Spinner, or how much training he had. Then again, there was very little that could catch a cat that didn't want to be caught. Especially, Shota was sure, a cat with all of Eraserhead's training and experience. If you wouldn't mind, Spinner, Kurigiri asked. Spinner huffed, an angsty teenager sigh, his hand, still holding his phone, drooping to dangle over the edge of the couch. Is this cat even worth the effort? Shota hissed loudly, lifting his hackles and flexing his claws. There was still a chance they'd just kick him out, and then he'd be home free. Kurigiri hesitated for a long moment, staring at Shota. Something is noteworthy about this cat, he said finally. He feels familiar. Shota really desperately hoped that Kurigiri hadn't realized that Shota was not, in fact, a cat. If anyone pegged him as a transformation person, even if they didn't realize exactly who, then he was as good as dead. If you say so, Spinner grumbled, rolling off the couch with a low oof. But I want the nice controller tonight. I'm sure that can be arranged, Kurigiri said. Should have caught a flicker of motion from the corner of his eye, which he tracked with one ear, but the majority of his attention was fixed on Spinner. It was a good thing, too. Gecko may have been a relatively weak quirk, but it gave Spinner the advantage of being able to walk on all fours, and he was shockingly fast on four legs. From the position on the floor, he took off like a bullet. Shota bolted the second Spinner started moving, sprinting for the kitchen table. The trick, as a cat running from a creature much larger and likely faster than you, was to make sure there were no open straightaways they could use to gain speed. Should have wove through the legs of the chairs and bar stools, even dodging directly through Kuragiri's legs. He could stay in one place, not if he wanted to avoid Kuragiri's portals, but he could shortcut under the couch where Spinner couldn't follow and take a brief refuge under the table. Should have moved around the counter, trying to make a break for Kuragiri's bottles of alcohol, but the whole stretch of open air between the counter and the bar top twisted with an opening portal, and Shota was forced to skid into a sharp turn. Spinner was too slow to return and ended up sliding directly through the portal. The portal took him to the other side of the counter, giving Shota the grace period he needed to recover from his redirection. Spinner made a wild grab for him as Shota zipped around the corner of the bar, but Shota slipped smoothly out of his range and used the villain's shoulder as a springboard. Jumping up onto the bar top, Shota leapt across the gap to the counter and only realized his error mid-air. The air twisted in front of him, and there was no way for Shota to change direction. When the portal still smelled like Obro, and Shota hated it. Shota fell out of the portal with his claws bared, furious as a proverbial wet cat. Shota knew that some people with animal-based mutant quirks could get tougher skin, thicker fur, or stronger scales than the animal their quirk absently developed from. Spinner's scales were certainly harder than Gecko's skin, but not by a whole lot. Shota's claws shredded him. Spinner squawked, flailing wildly as he tried to restrain Shota and stay away from his claws at the same time. Shota bit any fingers that came anywhere near his face and clawed everything else. A wild fury of claws and scales later, Shota was unceremoniously dropped on the floor yet again. Shota landed neatly on his feet, flicking his tail as Spinner scrambled away from him. 2 down, maybe 3. He wasn't entirely sure on Mr. Capress. He'd call it 2.5 for now. With any luck, he'd have the entirety of the League of Villains convinced to never come near him before he had to worry about spontaneously transforming back into a human. What is going on in here? Shota turned towards the voice, tucking his tail around his paws. There was a tall, muscular man standing in the doorway, bracing himself against the doorframe. He was taking in the room with a slightly baffled look, his gaze darting from Shota to Spinner to the portal still lingering over Kuragiri's counter. Shota made a show of swiping his paw over his ear, blatantly broadcasting how nonchalant and unbothered he was. The cat needs a collar, Kuragiri said. Yeah, that looks like it's going really well, the man said. Do you want to help? Spinner grumbled, gingerly rubbing his worst scratches. Shota eyed his handiwork and was glad to see at least half a dozen of the claw marks were deep enough to be slowly beading with blood. Why do we have this feisty kitty? The man asked with a frown. Kuragiri thinks he's special. Spinner hissed. Shota hissed back at him, and Spinner flinched. The man turned to look to Kuragiri. He is a quirked animal, Kuragiri said, and something about him is familiar to me. You think he's got a helpful quirk? The man asked, now more curious than doubtful. Perhaps a quirk we share, Kuragiri allowed. If Shota had eyebrows, he would have raised them. A quirk they shared? The phrasing there implied Kurogiri had more than one, which wasn't unheard of. Just look at Todoroki. There was no way that was one quirk, no matter the name. But it certainly wasn't common. Shota flicked his ear at Kurogiri, considering. He'd have to keep a close eye on the man, try to figure out what his secondary quirk was. That would be useful, the man mused, then sighed, pulling a pair of pink-tinted sunglasses out of his pocket. I'll see what I can do. Gravity changed direction. Well, that wasn't entirely accurate. Shota had experienced a change in gravity before. Gravity shifting quirks weren't unheard of, and Eraserhead was particularly useful against them. The look on a gravity manipulator's face when their opponent just kept running at them on flat ground was a beautiful thing to behold. So, Shota knew what gravity manipulation felt like. That and it wasn't this. The effects were very similar, though. The world spun around him, his paws torn from the floor as he flung straight towards the largest ferromagnetic thing in the room. Should have twisted midair, landing on his feet on the side of the freezer door. He was glowing, Shota realized. A staticky blue aura thrummed around him like water in a glass placed too close to a bass speaker. He's male, the man informed them blandly. Shota flicked his tail irritably, trying to pry his paws off the freezer door. They wouldn't come up, almost like they were glued down or magnetized. Shota looked over the man again, taking in his big lips and shoulder-length red hair. Was he wearing lip gloss? Or should that be she? Shota remembered reports from the training camp that included the attack on Mandalay that Tiger had headed off. The battle had included Spinner and a villain with a magnetism quirk, who looked like a man, but Spinner had referred to as Magni-chan. Other reports of Magne, sparse as they were, also noted that anyone associated with the villain referred to them as a woman. Tentatively, he was corrected. Shota was going to deem the newcomer Magne, and therefore a woman. There you go, Magne said. He can't move his paws now. Shota hissed at her. At Spinner, who was looking on with diction, and at Kurogiri, who was approaching Shota with the collar. Unfortunately, Magne was correct, and Shota couldn't pry any of his paws from the freezer door. He tried to bite Kurogiri, but with his paws practically glued down, Shota didn't have the range of motion to catch Kurogiri's fingers. Kurogiri carefully avoided Shota's teeth. The world filled with the scent of Oboro, and the collar clenched around his throat. The collar, Shota only realized after it had been put on him, was almost the exact same white-gray as his capture scarf. Hizashi would be in tears at the irony. As Kurogiri withdrew his fingers, he got sloppy. Shota twisted quick as a wink and sank his teeth deep into Kurogiri's finger. The Miss Villain yelped, yanking his hand out of Shota's mouth, and despite the man's lack of face, Shota was sure he had just barely resisted the urge to swear. He doesn't seem like a very nice kitty, Magne cooed. He's not, Spitter growled, licking the last bleeding cut on his forearm. Why is he here again? Kurogiri wanted to keep him, Spinner said bluntly. I doubt myself more every moment. Kurogiri sighed. If Shota's tail wasn't magnetized to the freezer door, he would have lashed it triumphantly. Instead, he meowed loudly, meow, meow, shooting Magne a positively scathing look. It would have made any of his students cower, and while it didn't have exactly the same effect on Magne, she did remove her magnetism. Soda dropped to the floor with an irritated huff and found, much to his dismay, that he didn't actually mind the collar. It was like his capture weapon, settled comfortably around his throat, loose enough that he could easily forget it was there, but also loose enough that if he could find something to catch on the collar, he might be able to slip out. Do you have cat treats? Magne asked, walking over to inspect the haul on the table. You might be able to win his affection. You're welcome to try, Mr. Capress said, tone dry as a desert. He set a bag of cat treats on the table, and Magne eyed it contemplatively. Should have sensed his new victim was within reach. He bided his time, waiting for Magne to make her decision. She approached him with the bag of cat treats, and hope still in her eyes. Intellectually, from his own long experience, Shota knew the treat smelled like catnip, but his feel and form he was stuck in, the familiar scent of catnip had been elevated to the same place in his brain as the scent of coffee or fancy cocktails. Magne held her hand out to him, treats resting in her flat palm. At the very least, she knew how to feed a cat. Shota wasn't going to eat the cat treats, of course. He knew better than to take mind-altering substances in the middle of a potentially hostile environment. He did step forward to sniff them, though. You see? Magne hummed. Every kitty loves catnip. Should have bit her hard. Magne yelped and tried to pull back, but Shota's grip was too tight on her finger. She dragged him almost a full meter, his paws sliding on the hardwood. For a brief moment, Shota found himself wishing Davi was there. Someone needed to laugh at Magne. And since Shota was a cat, it couldn't be him. Fortunately, before Shota could become too horrified by that thought, Spitter started laughing. Magne growled, and Shota growled back, digging his teeth deeper. Magne yelped, flailing wildly. Shota pinned his ears back and doggedly held on, waiting out the burst of panic. Finally, Magne brought her other hand into the equation, trying to pry Shota off her. Naturally, he completely refused to let go. There was blood on Shota's tongue, and it tasted like victory. The scent of Obro's cloud flooded around him, and Shota hissed through the fingers in his mouth. Slender fingers poked around his muzzle, and then prodded sharply at the back of his jaw. Shota's mouth popped open against his will, releasing Magne's fingers. She yanked her hand away and hastily stepped back, scowling at Shota. Not to be dissuaded, Shota transferred his attention to Kuragiri. The man had put his hand in direct biting range, after all. That was his mistake. With a vindictive hiss, Shota sank his teeth into the webbing between Kuragiri's fingers and thumb. Instead of screeching or yelping or cursing at him, Kuragiri just sighed. Well, now Shota just felt kind of sad. Shota allowed himself to be pried off Kuragiri and then immediately retreated under the table. He settled into a loaf a full meter away from Mr. Compress's legs, and used the open space between the chair and table legs to keep an eye on everyone beyond the table. Apparently, the morning truly began once Magne arrived. As soon as Magne had gotten over her bitten finger, breakfast was being put together. People came and went from the kitchen, cooking, carrying, and digging things out of the fridge. Should have watched them come and go as groceries were cleared off the table and breakfast was spread over it. It was a broad mishmash of traditional and Western breakfasts, with bowls of miso soup and rice set next to plates of bacon, sausage, and scrambled eggs. You want to drag the boss out here? Magna asked, as she set a jug of orange juice on the table. If you'll excuse me, Kuragiri agreed, slipping out of the room. A moment later, Kuragiri returned, not just Shigaraki, but the three remaining villains. Shota couldn't see any signs of Dabi's late-night quest for ice and mints. He looked like any normal teenager dragged out of bed, with only the promise of breakfast motivating him. His dark purple scars took the place of bags under his eyes, and Shota found himself almost concerned for the villain. Chairs scraped against the floor as people sat down. Others made up plates to eat at the bar top. Twice is sitting at the table, legs stretched out underneath him. It Shota would be a fool to pass up on that opportunity. Should have waited patiently, waited until Magne and Kuragiri had momentarily forgotten about him, until Toga had given up on spotting him coming out from under the couch, and Mr. Compress had poured himself a cup of coffee. Then he rose from his loaf and slunk towards Twice. First, a gentle brush of his tail on the man's leg. He shifted slightly, hooking one ankle over the other, but otherwise didn't react. Should have slunk under Twice's crossed legs, nose twitching. To his delight, the cat brain did include a built-in instinct for claw the inanimate thing in front of me. Just sat back on his hind legs, flexed his claws into long, wicked points, and dug them deep into Twice's skin. It was possibly quite the best reaction he'd gotten from anyone. Twice shrieked so loud and abrupt that every single person in the room jumped out of their chair. It even startled Shota a little. Knees slammed into the bottom of the tabletop. Dobby fumbled his coffee mug, splashing what was no doubt boiling hot liquid all over his scars, and swore loud and violent. A moment later, Shigaraki's voice joined him in seething profanities, and Shota smelled the unmistakable earthy scent of decay. That infernal cat! Mr. Compress howled. In a split second of sheer intuition, Shota leapt away from Twice, diving towards the opposite side of the table. A crackling whip of blue fire snapped through the space he'd been standing a seconds before. It should have ran for his life. People were talking over each other. Toga and Abby were both shouting. Shigaraki was muttering vile threats under his breath. Kuragiri was actually audibly steaming. It all faded into a cacophony of background noise as Shota dodged deadly lasers of azure fire, with nothing but his intuition to guide him. He couldn't use his quirk, not with his vision obscured by the table and the fire flying at him. He couldn't even see the attacks coming before they sheared straight through the surface of the table. Somehow, he was still alive anyway. Mr. Compress was a no-go. Shota didn't dare get near enough to let the man use his quirk on him. Shigaraki was similarly ruled out. Spinner and Magne were at the bar top, and getting to them would require running directly at the furious villain shooting fire out at Shota. Twice had hastily retreated to the bar top next to them as soon as he managed to get out of his chair. Kurogiri had some way to make himself intangible, and Shota wasn't willing to risk it, which left no one but Toga. Shota leapt around another arc of flame, his skin under his fur feeling as dry and prickly as his eyes usually were. The table was mostly a smoldering wreck by now, but it was just enough cover that Dabby couldn't immediately tell where Shota had gone. He needed barely half a meter to get to the chair Toga had been sitting in. It was a full meter sprint from there to Toga herself, who had stood back once fire started flying. With his ears pinned to his skull and his fur puffed out like a terrified feather duster, should have bolted the deadly distance. He dug his claws into Toga's yoga pants and practically flew up her, scaling the villain like she was a ladder. Regardless of any emotional connections Dabby might or might not have for her, Toga was a useful agent for the League of Villains. Certainly worth more than a petty revenge against an irritating house cat, even a house cat that was more intelligent than most. The only question was, would Dobby stop to think about his actions? Should have braced himself with front claws on Toga's shoulder, his back claws still horribly sore from scrambling at the door all night, hooked onto the pocket area of her loose sweatshirt. The whole room froze. Shoulda curled his tail in close, and didn't let his head rise any higher than Toga's shoulder. He got you there, Spinner said awkwardly. The words were overwhelmed and consumed by broiling silence. The only sound that dared pierce it, the hissing, almost steaming noise Kuragiri was making. Should have felt the insistent tug of magnetism jolt him away from Toga, but he clung desperately to her hoodie with all four paws and refused to be pulled away. Will you put your fire out, Dobby? Toga asked, annoyance almost covering up the mixed fear and delight in her voice. That finally shattered the tension in the room. The magnetism released Shota, letting gravity reclaim him. Just for that, I'm not even going to bite you, Shota said, and refused to admit, even to himself, that his voice was shaking. Also, considering who Toga was, she'd probably just bite him back. I want that cat out, Dobby hissed, and Shota flicked his glance at him to find guttering spouts of azer fire flaring from his wrists. It was far more extreme reaction than spilling hot coffee on him should warrant. Even combined with the mild irritation Shota had caused during Dobby's midnight adventure for ice and mints. The clearly unintentional small use of his quirk added another huge tick to the immediate flame quirk pre-meltdown column. Regular mood swings and bouts of strong emotion tended to be associated with sudden, huge discharges, not constant, uncontrollable flickering. Not that that Not that said information was especially helpful for Shota at the moment. Quirk, myth- Quirk meltdown notwithstanding, Shota was lucky to still have his fur after Dobby's emotional meltdown. I want to keep him, Toga insisted, and she wrapped both arms around Shota, pressing him against her chest. Shoulda squirmed uncomfortably, but didn't try to escape or hold. It wouldn't be too hard to get out if he wanted to, but he was planning to stick close by for a while still, at least until Dabby was no longer had unrestrained fire creeping up his arms. You keep him in here, I will set him on fire, Dobby snarled. You can't set Dracula on fire, Toga gasped, her arms tightening around Shota. We're keeping the cat, Shigaraki said abruptly. Shota wasn't the only one shocked by his interjection. The fire on Dobby's arm sputtered out as he turned to gape at Shigaraki, and Toga gaped with shocked delight. Why? Dobby demanded. What do you want with that demon? Well, for one thing, you hate him. Shigaraki's mouth peeled open into a cracking fissure on his face, and he peered through his bangs at Shota, red eyes swirling with manic energy as he whispered, and I want to see what else he'll do. A cold chill crept down Shota's spine, and he was glad his fur was already puffed up as it could be possibly be. And people said he had a creepy smile. That's the end of this chapter. Oh my god, it was so hard not to die laughing. This chapter is just really funny to me. It's a funny chapter. What can I say? Um, hey Pinma, I have summoned you. You want to ask a question to see if you could find a story, or if you want to ask me specifically if I have a story related to something?
Not really. I'm currently eating it.
Oh,
No,
you're just
how did
eating?
yeah? Not never mind. That's I think I when what what's your favorite food and like how did you like really like get first in contact with your favorite food? Since it's a food related, which is I'm eating.
How did I get in contact with my
Like
favorite
basically
food?
like when was the first time you ate your favorite food? And what is it and what is it?
Okay, this is kind of a hard question because it's split between a few things. Okay? Pancakes, for
Mm-hmm.
one, because you could buy like these pancake things that are really easy to make. I don't remember the first time I ate them, but I remember me and my dad having an argument because I thought he was insane at first. Okay, so we had these chocolate pancakes. You know those chocolate pancakes you could throw into the microwave for like 45 to 50 seconds and take them out, then like take them out and they would have chocolate in them? Yeah, those are the types of pancakes I'm talking about. What he would do is he would cook it and then he would put cheese in between it. I didn't think this would be good because it was like cheese with chocolate pancakes. Huh. He was like, just try it. And he just pestered me for a good 20 minutes about it. And I'm like, fine, I'll try it. I tried it and it was actually really good. One of my favorite combos. If we're talking just straight up favorite food, I think I've been eating it for most of my life. So I don't actually remember the first time I ate it. But it's, I don't know how to say it, like at all. I know there's a Portuguese name for it. It's a Portuguese dish. But it's a type of meat with the way it's cooked. It's like stringy, kind of. It's hard to explain. It's not gummy, but it's stringy. It's like, you know the meat that kind of falls apart when you're eating it? Like the same type of meat that would be normally like broken apart for
Yeah.
those sandwiches like sloppy joes. It's the same kind of meat, but it's like in its complete form. So when you try to eat it, it just kind of falls apart to like a kind of like the same meat consistency as a sloppy joe. It's oddly good.
Oh, I think
So
I've tried like once or I'm not sure.
yeah. So I think that's gonna be the story time, I guess. Not really a story this time, but it's a little question. But anyway, I'm gonna try recording the series thing, the it's an alternate path thing. It's a one shot little alternate of something that could have happened in I Borrow a Cat's Paws. I just kind of want to get it out of the way. I was originally going to record it after I finished the other three, but I realized that there's a good chance there'll be a fourth part to the series, so I was like, nah, I want to keep all the others in order. So I'll be recording that after. I did get permission for another series, but I am gonna actually have a vote on my thing. What is it called? On my post. There's gonna be a vote on if I should alternate between series or not. Because I have permission for two series. One that is fully complete. It is. I'm not gonna say what it is. I've been like, it's a series I've been hinting at for days. Okay, that I've been really excited about. And this series, or if I should first finish this series for okay, I wouldn't be finishing it. I'd be finishing the first 60 chapters, approximately 60 chapters of this series. I say approximately because one of them is 28 and then you have that one shot. There's also art. There is an art thing that I will not be showing, but I will be mentioning. Um but yeah, I so I will only be doing technically 59 chapters of this, even though there are 11 more chapters out of the next part of the series, Marks of a Cat's Paws inked on our lives, because I kind of want to wait until that one's finished before continuing on. You'll understand why. I mainly Podfic complete series. Like I said on my post, I know one author actually sent me their fic, or mentioned their fic to me, and I actually went to go find it to go read it. They just started it, so I'm not going to be podficking that yet. Even though it is really good idea. But I usually podfic complete things, and if I don't see anything that's like on the author's profile saying they don't do podfics or anything, I'm more than willing to ask. But sometimes I have to get creative because some people just don't use AO3 notifications because they get flooded a lot. I do because I like looking at comments of any type. Doesn't matter if there's something reacting to something I said on somebody's thing or if they're on a fic that I wrote or whatever. Anyway, I should shut the fuck up and go do that post and then all that jazz. I do have a blooper. But for now, bye! You want to say bye to Pinma? Earth to Pinma? You want to say bye? See if your mic wants to pick up. Let's see. Nope, your mic is not working. Your mic has decided to say fuck you today. Yeah, it's just not working. You want to just type a message and I'll just say it? Yeah, okay. Anyway, sorry for the awkward silence. I'm waiting for Finma time. It was a great time listening to Pika read. I was voluntold to be here. Okay, listen, I only grabbed you out of a random chat. Listen. Hey, at least you know me, okay? If you didn't answer, I was probably gonna grab a stranger. And that's all I have to say. Okay then. Hope y'all enjoyed. Bye. But I want a nice controller tonight. I want the nice controller night. Okay, I'm redoing that. I'm redoing.